Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org. I'm Charles Epting from H.R. Harmer in New York City.
And I'm Michael Cortese of NobleSpirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Now, Michael,
Charles,
first for CW.
You have, before, for diehard listeners of the podcast, they may have heard us mention this a couple times, but you actually have another podcast called the Lost Labels Podcast.
I do have another podcast called the Lost Labels Podcast because I'm a music fanatic.
Yeah.
And especially music of the 1970s.
Yeah.
Even though I would not be born for another 2 decades, my record collection. Recently, I've been spending more money on my stamp collection, to be honest. and yeah, today's an exciting one because I get to combine these two loves. This is the first Conversations with Philatelist guest who is a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This may be our only guest ever who is an inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're talking to Pat Simmons of the Doobie Brothers. And Pat is a founder, the only consistent member through all the band's incarnations. I mean, this is the guy who wrote Blackwater. This guy plays on China Grove and just so many great rock songs. I mean, like, Doobie Brothers are sort of the ultimate quintessential 70s rock band. I mean, they've got the look, they've got the style, they've got the hits, they've got the attitude. They are, like, when you think of the 70s, it's like Fleetwood Mac, Doobie Brothers, Led Zeppelin. There's these bands that are just like bigger than life.
Yeah.
And Pat is a stamp collector.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I did not know until you had told me a while ago, about 6 months ago.
No, it's funny. So my father is working with the Doobie Brothers on a project, and he was talking to Pat about what I did for a living. I met Pat at a concert a couple years ago, and Pat said, "That's crazy." I mean, he told my father that he was a stamp collector, and that was how this came about. So this is not something that I think many people know, but to have this, again, rock star, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, just musical legend, who's a stamp collector, I think this is going to be really fun. I can't wait to talk to him about this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it a lot because, again, like you said, not many people know. He's been kind of, I feel like, secretive about it. Maybe not holding it on purpose, holding it too close to the chest, but I don't know too much about his collecting.
In these arenas and everything, there's probably not many stamp collectors around to talk about your latest purchases with. So I hopefully we can give him a forum to let the cat out of the bag with his stamp collection.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a lot of questions to ask about his personal collecting habits, and
this will be a lot of fun. Let's bring him on.
Let's bring him in.
There we go.
Can you hear me, guys?
We can hear you.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me. I hope I say something that helps.
That's what's so much fun about this. And Michael pitched this idea to have this podcast to me last summer at the height of the pandemic. And it really wasn't about, there's plenty of, Zoom lectures. And, if you want the really highbrow philatelic stuff, it's out there. The weeds and the nitty-gritty is all available. We wanted a platform where we could just talk to people and tell people stories rather than stamp stories, because I think that's what's so much fun about this hobby, are the people we meet, the dealers, the collectors, the auctioneers, the museum curators, and that's what this is about. It's not about stamps necessarily. It's the people behind the stamps and the people who, this hobby brings so many disparate, crazy people together, in a common love. So I think that's what's so much fun about what Michael and I do.
Cool.
Michael, you want to kick things off?
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. If you wouldn't mind just taking a second, do you mind explaining kind of how you got into stamp collecting, what your first interactions with stamps were, and how you got into collecting?
I was just a kid when I first discovered stamps. It was through mutual friends that were stamp collectors, which is crazy. They were like, I was about 8 years old maybe, and I hung out with these kids when I moved to this neighborhood in California. Los Gatos was the area, Northern California. My parents, my father was a vet and moved out to California in the mid 50s, maybe from Washington State. So anyway, I ended up in this neighborhood with these kids that are kind of, bad. They were kind of bad kids, but one of the guys collected comic books, and I was a total comic book freak. And so we would trade comics all the time. And one day I was over there, and he's got this pile of stamps sitting on a card table in his living room, and I'm going, what are you doing? He goes, well, I collect these things. I go, really? I go, why? He goes, oh, they're just really neat. Here, take these. These are all duplicates. I've got all these. I don't want these. Just take them home, and check it out and see what you think about it. So, well, really, okay. So I took them home and I started looking at them that night, and they were British. So there's Queen Elizabeth. I'm looking on this stamp of Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip. And the German stamps with these people, Belgian stamps. He had all these European stamps, and I go, wow, look at these images. They're so out. What is this? And everything was very not everything, but the British stamps were sort of Victorian and in appearance, and the German stuff was kind of like deco. This real images that were like cold and chiseled, and and the Belgian stamps were that way too. So it was like, wow, these are, and then I had some American stamps that he gave me as well. I'm looking, so you're comparing like cultures and how what other people see as images within their culture daily, like just ordinary images for them. But for me, as an 8-year-old kid, I'm going, oh, wow, this is so bizarre. What is this? And so that's how I got into it. So I sat there and I sorted all the duplicates to be the ones that were the same, all the 3 pence. I don't even know what they were. I don't collect any foreign stamps so much anymore, but I back then I really got into it. I got into and come to find out that in the neighborhood, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 miles away, we get on our bicycles and we could ride our bikes to this store. It was a philatelic store, George Grant Stamps, Crafts, and Arts. And so we go in there, and here's this guy, George Grant. He's got 2 hearing aids, and he's yelling, come here, let me show you, kid. We go over. And so that was a whole, culturally smoking cigars, and so he was, really into it. And I'm going, these kids and this guy, this crazy man, smoking cigars. There's got to be something here, So I got into it. I started collecting, and I my parents were like, well, that's a nice thing. That's really good for you. So, little do they know, we're like, I'm running these guys that are like, we have a dozen Playboy magazines up in our treehouse, and these guys are like stealing bicycles and parting them out to each other. And I'm going, wow, these are bad kids, but they collect stamps anyway and comics. So it was a rough crowd, but they were, it was minor stuff, obviously, but I survived it. Luckily, I only lived there a couple of years, and we moved. But I took stamp collecting with me, and it's been part of my life since that time. I don't do it like I used to back then, or even in later years. But I switched from international stamps to U.S. stamps a long time ago, and I realized with so many stamps, and so little time, so many stamps, that I was better off, so that's kind of where I ended up. And I still fool around with it. I look at it as kind of it's my FDR moment when I reach that moment in my life where I can't go anywhere. Okay, I'll just sit here at my desk and look at sort my stamps. That's kind of where it's going to go. But but my connection to the world started with stamps, and I kind of still see it that way as a hobby. It's still a connection to the world. When I look at my stamps, I see a connection to history. I see a connection to politics. I see a connection to economy, invention, brilliance, art. There's just so many levels. I'm not telling you anything or anybody else something they don't already know, but to me that means something, and it's always there. I know I'm always overwhelmed when I start looking, really telescoping in on any particular stamp or any particular period of time when stamps were, being made, and all the incredible momentous events that were taking place then. And, it's all commemorated in stamps, so.
Well, you raise a good point that I think Michael and I might take for granted, because we're of the generation that just Googles everything if you don't know something. But stamps were a way of communicating information. That, again, as a young child, that was your first, introduction to world leaders and politics and all these things. Stamps served a really important practical purpose in that regard.
And cultures, appreciating cultures. You think of cultures. It's real easy, especially as a sort of I won't say we're elitist, but we have a certain we're lucky. We're a bunch of white guys and in a really cross-cultural country here that's right now it's having some real new moments that we never could have imagined. People often think of other cultures as primitive, and then you start looking at philatelic, and the best stamps are from arguably the countries that Donald Trump called shithole countries. Mozambique, ridiculously beautiful stamps. Trying to think.
It gives you a whole new appreciation for these places, though. Yeah, maybe you've only heard of them.
Madagascar was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The Congo, ridiculous stamps from so beautiful compared to, and no offense to our industry here, but you see these giant and incredibly artistic, beautifully sculpted in shape of triangles, and I just love that.
So as a kid, once you got a taste of it, did you start saving up allowance money? Were there things you had your eye on?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it was a quest, always in search of to build my collection. To be, I don't know, the guy with the most toys who died happy. No, just collecting. It's a sickness. And I fell in love with it, and I still love it. I'm very selective, when I look at stamps now, and it's not because I'm selective. I'm looking for something in particular, but I think a little more often now. Stamps are much more expensive, and if I do want something, I start to research it before I would go out and search and look and to buy something.
So you had talked a little bit about who brought you into it. It was kind of a social thing for you in the beginning, and then kind of maybe branched off into just kind of your own investigation and your own interest. Has it always remained have you kept in touch with those first people that got you into it? Have you looked into becoming members of a society, or has it been solitary hobby for you?
Yeah, no, it's been a solitary hobby for me. Just just a fun thing. It's funny because I suppose a lot of people are investing in stamps these days. And, as a collector, we never thought of our collections as investments. Back then, they were always just, collections, something to have under your bed, right? It as with all collecting, it's changed dramatically. I'm glad I collected, because accidentally I collected some stuff that was a good investment, but not,
not by design.
Fell out of the sky and hit me in the head.
I know that guys like Rod Stewart, he's a model train enthusiast. I'm sure a lot of musicians have their the little quirks and hobbies. Have you ever come across anyone while on the road or at a festival? Do you know of any other people in your industry who are maybe stamp collectors or collectors of other things? Has this ever come up in conversation?
I don't know anyone that's a musician that collects stamps. I'm sure there are people out there. Lee Sklar is a bass player, played with James Taylor, and he's a major studio guy, played on every great record known to mankind just about the last 50 years. But Lee is an incredible collector, and I wouldn't be surprised that stamps are somewhere in there, just knowing Lee, such an intellectual guy. And I got to think, but it's hard to say. To me, philately is, it's a calling in a way. It's not something that you could go, I'm going to be a stamp collector. It's like you fall into it, and then you just go, wow, this is really, there's so many levels to this that is just, it's fascinating, and it's beautiful. To me, stamps to me are, every single one is a work of art. And so, whenever I'm looking at stamps, I look at one stamp, and then all the subtleties of color and perforation and glue or not glue, and things, odd things that make them more esoteric. I appreciate that, the oddity of it, I think, too, because it's not something that everyone does, and it's not something that is apparent when you first start looking at stamps, that they're obviously, this is why this stamp is, costs more or something. You don't get, I don't know why is that one, it looks the same as that one, but it's not. There's little subtleties that. And then, canceling should, that's been kind of a wake up for me. It used to be, oh God, don't want any ink on that image. We wanted to be like it was never used. But now canceling has become sort of that gives it a provenance that never had before. So even though it's compromising the image somewhat, it still enhances the historic value, and there's a story there. I like that.
As the band got bigger and you found yourself out on the road more, visiting new places, especially other countries, did you ever find yourself, taking note of stamps anywhere you traveled? Would you ever stop by a post office? You had a perspective that a lot of people.
For sure, I had ceased collecting foreign stamps. So, I would go to countries and I would see foreign stamps. But between the time that I ceased collecting foreign stamps, I started getting into old motorcycles. And so I had opened a shop with a friend of mine selling parts for old bikes, primarily Harleys and Indians, probably from, mid 30s Harleys, Indians, up to some more contemporary stuff, but primarily, I would say 60s, 30s to 60s. So that was kind of odd, same weirdness that I've, my whole life has been kind of an odd little esoteric trip for me. But so got into the old bike. So I went out and those were the days you could buy an old motorcycle for dirt. It just, people were saying, please take it away. It's getting grease all over my floor here. And so I picked up a bunch of old Harleys and kind of fell in love. I mean, I bought 4 1917 to about 1930 Harleys, all 4 of them together for like, I don't know, $1,200 or something. And I had them for my little shop with my friend. And so I started collecting motorcycle stamps basically after I got into the old bikes. So I started riding the old bikes, and I got a few old bikes. But anyway, so then I decided, okay, well, so then when I went to foreign countries, I would find motorcycle stamps. So that became kind of a little extension of motorcycling, and something that I enjoyed with stamp collecting, philately. So anyway, I went to Russia to play in Moscow during the I forget how you pronounce it, the perestroika. Is that right? The opening of when the guy with the birthmarks on his head.
Was that
remember
Khrushchev?
The premiere? No, after him later.
I'm trying to remember the order of it.
He was the last, next to the last communist guy. But anyway, he invited people over there to try and open up the country, and went over with Steve Wozniak and a bunch of musicians, Bonnie Raitt, Carlos Santana, the Doobie Brothers. We went over there. It was still a communist country, and it was really kind of unpleasant. They didn't like us because we were capitalists. And so they liked us because we were with Steve Wozniak, and they thought, oh, well, you'll bring some computerization to us, so we'll put up with these yo-yos. But we, anyway, you could go down to the park there in downtown Moscow, and there were all these little black market stands where people bought, groceries, and all the markets were like, you can only buy certain things only between certain hours of the day, and once they're sold out, you're out of luck. You have no bread, no meat. If you're lucky, you got some pickles or, some turnips or something, Wow. It was really a hard time for the Soviet Union back then. So they had all these little black market stands. So I'm strolling by and I see this guy, and they're not sanctioned, right? Anytime the guys can go in there and bust them and take them to prison, to jail. And I mean, you have no recourse. There's no democracy. You don't have, you broke the law, you're going to jail. That's the end of it. So, but for some reason that probably payoffs. So I go under this little thing, and here's this guy selling stamps. And I go, wow, you're selling these? He goes, yes. I go, you American? I go, yes. He goes, you want to sell Levi's? You sell jeans? I go, no, I don't buy my jeans. He goes, okay, what do you want? I go, well, I wouldn't mind buying some stamps. Oh, can't sell. You can't take from country. I go, really? I go, I can sell, but can't tell anyone where you get them. I go, okay, let's check it out. So I start looking. Here's all these stamps from the Soviet bloc. Vietnam, I think Laos, China, Korea, North Korea, Soviet, Czechoslovakia, Poland, all the ones that were in the bloc at that time, West Berlin. All these motorcycle stamps. They're all motorcycle stamps. All these Soviet bloc countries. So I buy them all. And stash them, and you're not supposed to carry anything out of the country. You can't even carry Soviet money out of the Soviet Union at that time. I carried all money. I carried these stamps, everything. I think I put them in my pocket or something. Nobody said anything, but I still got them. They were really cool. And right at the end of these countries being a part of the Soviet bloc, so they were, they were being bankrolled. All the countries, I don't know if they were anymore. They were starting to lose the bankroll because Russia was going broke. But anyway, that a long story. That I don't know if it had much of an impact punchline, but I have these stamps from
the concept of buying stamps at a black market is so different from your early. Again, on the one hand, you've got the guy with the cigar in Northern California. And on the other hand, you're in Moscow in a tent buying them,
Yeah, Philadelphia, it's kind of like a shady business. It really is. It's a shady.
That's incredible. Well, you talked earlier about stamps kind of shaping your worldview and giving you a view into history and other countries. Do you ever find them influencing your music at all?
Good question. I don't. Not directly, no. I haven't thought about it. There's been no lyrical references, but thank you. I'm still writing.
Yeah. We'll look for the song about stamps.
Yeah.
So we got a new record. I wrote a song about motorcycles. So.
Well, do you? I mean, obviously, motorcycles and stamps couldn't be more different. On the one hand, motorcycles are a lot more practical and fun. But do you find that your desire to collect and your desire to tap into the past sort of comes from the same place? Because you talk about the kids collecting comic books. I think there is a collecting gene, and again, even though motorcycles and stamps, a lot of people wouldn't see any sort of connection. But when you're on a bike from the 30s. And you have a postage stamp from the 30s. Do you get the same sort of feeling?
They definitely have a relative relationship. I think. I think probably stamp collectors less than motorcyclists and antique motorcycle guys, but because the American antique. Stamps that were special delivery stamps. They're about, I want to say around the late teens, early 20s. There's some model. What's cool is they were in conjunction with Harley Davidson, which Harley has always been very anal about their image and how they portray themselves. And they were able to come up with a really wonderfully tasteful stamp that really frames the Harley Davidson as being this iconic mail delivery system. And they made a whole series of stamps, special deliveries. They were very desirable as a collectible. Every, guys that collect U.S. stamps would like to have. I think I have the whole series. And
that's based on a specific model bike? Because I know the stamp
well. I want to say that is... the JD model motorcycle. So it started around 1917. 1915 was kind of the definitive bike that came up, and then by 17 they came up with this JD model, and the JD went on till 1929. And I believe those stamps, they may be later than the early 20s. But it has a JD bike in there, I'm pretty sure, 20s version. And it was an iconic motorcycle for that era. And I'm sure there are other motorcycle stamps. I haven't, you don't see that many.
So you talked about how you've become more selective with your collecting. Is there anything that you've got your heart set on? Is there a holy grail for you? For your collection that's maybe it's captivated you since you were a kid, or maybe only more recently, but is there something?
I have the first two US issue stamps, and I have a couple of the Franklin and the Washington, and I was it a 5 and the 10 cent, is that what they are? I think so. And I have versions of those. I would really wish I could get some better versions. They have gotten just way expensive now. It's hard to justify paying the kind of money for stamps that these days. But anyway, the early American stamps hold a fascination for me right now. I think So I'm kind of looking, but I haven't been purchasing. There's just, I don't know. I'm trying to get rid of stuff now. So like I say, I have a feeling that my stamp collecting will probably come back around as I have more time and, maybe I'm less physical, less mobile. It'll be one of those hobbies. I think I hate to be that way. Like say it's an old man's hobby, but it's probably going to be my old man's hobby. Because
but it's great. It's always waiting there for you. You can.
That's kind of what I feel too.
And then come back home to it.
Yeah, they're old friends. Your stamps are your old friends to me. I mean, no matter how many times you viewed them, when you come back, you kind of have this good feeling and that warm feeling that you're looking at, an old stamp that you always loved and that you have in your collection. It's just, there's a lot of repairing, I think, for me in the future. I know that, with hinging and stuff that went on in the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, even. I mean, that was just, we didn't know. We had no idea. Now that, there's a new era of a way to preserve your stamps. I'm going to have to go back and clean up stamps and, sort of repurpose them, revalue them. And I think there are ways to do that now that, with all kinds of different methods without screwing the stamp up and preserving what's the good part of it and getting rid of some of the bad chemical stuff that's residues that have been left behind. So that's a future thing for me for sure.
So it started with the guy in California with the cigar, and then moved to the black market stamps in Russia. So where do you look to now to buy stamps that you're looking for?
It's almost accidental. Oftentimes, when I travel, I'll just see a store and I fall in, and I don't do this, and I haven't been doing this, and I probably will start doing it, but I'm going to start looking through my stamp collection at things that, I could use. And, when I'm out working, when I'm touring and stuff, those are great opportunities to view things. And, if you're looking for something, that's a good way to find a good deal somewhere, on a little store that somebody just got rid of their stamp collection and it's sitting in behind the counter somewhere. And most guys go, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out, go look at it. And it's it never ceases to amaze me where stamps end up and who ends up with them. And often, because a lot of guys like me that have stamp collections, they pass on, and the family goes, oh, I don't know what to do with this crap, and they end up giving it away to somebody, and then somebody has a nice collection that they end up selling in their store. And if you're there at the right time, you're the guy.
The thrill of the hunt is such an important part of this hobby. That idea that you could always walk into a store and see something unexpected is, I think, what keeps a lot of us going.
Yeah, and there's such a volume of stamps out there, and certainly there's duplicates of everything under the sun, but there's always, still a very, certain stamps that are hard to find. And, if they're out there, you just got to stumble across them. That's so much fun when that happens, that's something that you knew you didn't have, and there it is. And it's something affordable that you don't feel like you're getting robbed,
So do you bring your collection with you on the road, or parts of it?
No, I'd lose it. Something. I lost a whole book of foreign stamps, moving around as a teenager and a college student, and somebody walked away with it, maybe, I don't know, but happens. Pretty common, I'm sure.
Better to keep them away from the shows then.
Yeah,
you got to keep stuff away from the hoarders. Can't let them get it.
Well, Pat, this has been fantastic. Michael, do you have anything else?
I think that's it. This has been incredible. Thank you so much.
Again,
thanks, Charles. Thanks, Michael. Yeah.
Again, this podcast has taken us so many different places, and again, it's these stories. Again, the Russia story I love, and this is the stuff that makes, again, the hobby, the stamps are great. We all love the stamps. That's why we're here. But it's these personal stories, these personal connections that, they're the reason I can see myself collecting stamps for the rest of my life. So this was fantastic, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Nice talking to you guys. Appreciate you
so
giving
much.
me the time.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Your dad said, hey.
I was going to say tell him hey, but I'm not sure who will talk to him first. But and next time you guys play New York, I hope I can see you again when you're
Yeah. Cool. Okay, buddy.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Guys, take care.
You too.
Good seeing you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Michael, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It also just makes me want to go listen to the music. I was blasting Doobie Brothers on my train ride today, and talking to him, like as he's talking, I'm just hearing all these great songs in the back of my mind. But what a fun conversation that was. You don't think about how many different walks of life. Like was the great equalizer. Here's a guy who's toured the world, incredible rock band, celebrating 50 years. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he comes home from a tour and he just wants to sit with his old friends, his stamps.
Yeah.
And
it's incredible.
What an amazing hobby this is, that like he's
on tour, doing a world tour, and he's going into shops looking for stamps to buy. This is what he's thinking of.
You and I have something in common with this guy in this rock band. And I think that's what's so brilliant about this hobby. Is that, it just connects people who really have, shouldn't have anything in common. And here we are. We all love the same things. We all, we all want those special delivery stamps or the US number 1 and 2. Like there's these touchstones, there's these frames of reference that we all share. And that's what makes this hobby just so incredible.
I love how his collecting evolved over the course of his life. As he got into motorcycle collecting, he then wanted to get into topical motorcycle stamps. Stamps never... His passion for stamps never wavered throughout his entire life.
And you're right. You can tailor it to where you are in life. You're a kid, you want to collect one of everything worldwide, Britain, Belgium, Germany. Then you get older, you specialize a bit more, you find your passion, motorcycles, boom, there's stamps for that. I think that I think that his story is, on the one hand, it's so universal. I think everybody can relate to it. The difference is this guy's up there on stage, playing and singing Black Water to a crowd of countless people over the years.
Yeah.
And yet we can still relate to these stories that he tells. How incredible is that?
And yet he's still got time to talk about stamps.
Exactly. And I think it also shows that we never grow up. He's still that 8-year-old kid hanging out with the hoodlums, stealing the bikes and everything.
Yeah. And as you mentioned kind of briefly while we were off camera, he still remembers the name of the stamp shop that he ever bought a stamp
going into the black market. These you can tell that this sort of punctuated his life, and they're these great milestones for him. I enjoyed that call so much. If you can't tell, again, it has nothing to do with my love of music. But no, it was just incredible. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, because I'm 100% credit to you because you were the connection there. You knew him personally before.
If we don't mention who set up the interview, it can be assumed it was you. So whenever I do something right, you have to give me props. No, this was fun. I'm glad I could set this one up. I really hope people like this episode as much as I did. For people listening, you can watch us on YouTube. It looked like the weather was much nicer in Hawaii than it is currently here on the East Coast. But you can watch us on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the big podcast services. philatelypodcast.com, philatelypodcast@gmail.com. Yep. We love getting listener mail. We haven't gotten a ton lately, probably because everyone's busy tweeting at us.
Yeah.
But no,
Charles L. Epting.
Charles L. Epting. And
Michael J. Court.
Michael J. Court and Charles L. Epting on Twitter. But no, Michael, this was a lot of fun. I'm really amped up about this one, and I can't wait for people to hear it.
Yeah, me too. Until next time.
And Westpex is fast approaching.
Yes.
I'm going to see you in just a couple of weeks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too.
All right.
Let's talk again soon.
See ya.
Yep.
Bye.